Ha! Live at last. So I'm wearing big headsets today, wireless, so I'm not stuck so close to the YouTube thing. I hope this is broadcasting. Nobody's there. So you never know about these things. Hopefully someone will show up. 0 viewers, 0 link. I'm a little late. Apologize for that. I was going to go over the comments from last episode, because I talked about keeping track of calorie intake, and I got some resistance on that idea. And I think one of the reasons we get resistance on that, and I totally understand why someone would say, well, it's about what you eat, not about how much you eat. Now, this is actually a fiction. Even though if you eat really well, there are advantages to eat certain foods, and there are disadvantages to eating certain foods. It isn't guaranteed you're going to lose weight. And one of the things you have to balance is the sheer fact of you need to be aware that it's calories that will be converted to fat, excess calories. It's just what happens. Now, obese people are more efficient at doing that as a general rule. Now, it's actually one of the interesting things is the people that don't gain weight. What is it that's going on with them, and why aren't they gaining weight? Why, if some people, and clearly they're eating more than they should. Now, I don't know the studies of that, but I know there has to be people out there that are eating way more calories, and they're still keeping their weight in what we call normal range. So what is possible is that you can eat more than you need and still not gain weight. What is not possible is that you eat, how does that work? Less than you need and not lose weight. Now, that being said, it can be an unhealthy loss of weight. But if you lose weight, if you eat as much as you need, you will not gain weight, or at least you will not gain fat or muscle weight. You may gain water weight because you can drink more water and you can retain water. So there are variables that that should be kind of accounted for. They shouldn't be extreme. Some people like to make the distinction between good weight and bad weight. And there's nothing wrong with that. So what I was going at in terms of the calorie thing was, it's very important to know what you are eating and not be too stressed out about what you're eating at the same time. Now, this episode is about stress. It's not about calorie counting, but there is stress involved in calorie counting. Now, the point that was being made last week on my last week's show was that it's really important to be aware of what you're eating. And I actually agree with that. But the problem, I'm actually putting some background noise so my headphones won't go off. But it's not working too well. Anyhow, the point that he was making was there are some food allergies, basically. And he was pointing out the, I want to say, probiotic diet. Basically, he was calling it wheat belly, and just that we're allergic to wheat in a way. So he is, I do encourage you to read the comments, and I will actually put a link into this YouTube video back to the comments that I've actually put into a Google Doc. And so the point here is, everyone has their favorite diet. What I did in this particular instance was I took them to a web page and I said, on this web page, it was like CBS News did a report on diets and the most successful diets. And one of the things they pointed out, the Weight Watchers turned out to be the most successful diet. And your reaction is, Oh, I have one viewer. Come, join us. Anyways, what was I saying? Now, of course, I lose my train of thought on this. Was his particular diet that he was talking about had the lowest success rate in terms of how they were measuring the their again, I'll have a link to that in this video as well. But what I was trying to point out is that there's a lot to do with the social and the psychological aspects in terms of successful weight loss. Now, again, we were talking about there's good weight and there's bad weight. Where ideally what we're trying to do is we're trying to lose excess fat or adipose tissue. See if I can say that right. And that's what the goal is. And it's also about, good weight is also muscle mass. You want to retain as much muscle mass, as much muscle tone as you can. These are all good things to know. But we can get stressed out about the foods we eat. And part of what I was pointing out to him was, yeah, this might be a very good diet for one person. And it might be something that would be ideal for them to go become successful. Because really, ultimately, that's what it's about. What is the one thing you can do to help you be successful? And I was using the example of calorie counting as sort of an object lesson, but it can be very stressful. There's no question that calorie counting can be very stressful. And what I was getting resistance from was him, who was just, calorie counters are Nazis, because it's difficult to keep track. And I would have never attempted it had there not been a tool like MyFitnessPal to make that process a little more seamless in my life. Because I'm a chaotic person. It's by nature, I work that way. So it's true. I agree that it's important to understand that there are certain diets that are very useful, and you shouldn't be convinced that there's only one possible diet. There may be another diet for you. Just because one diet hasn't worked for you, don't try another. Now, when I say diet, I use it in the general term. Whatever you eat is your diet. Now, you got mad at me and says, you shouldn't call it a diet. Well, it is a diet. It's what you eat. That is a diet. A dog has a diet. A cat has a diet. A mouse has a diet. We all have diets. To say it is a diet is somewhat derogatory. It's what you eat, but it is your diet. So I know people are like, we shouldn't call it a diet. Well, it's a lifestyle. Yes, but let's not get too freaked out about words. Some people interpret the word diet as something that is stressful, and that can be a stressor. And if it helps you not to call it a diet, okay. But sometimes people are going to say things to you that are going to be stressful. And maybe reinterpreting what they say in a positive way is something you'll have to do. So when someone says diet, you can think, oh, you mean my lifestyle, my eating lifestyle. Whatever puts it in a positive and a constructive framework, because that's very important. When you are focused, if you're morbidly obese, or to the point that you're so unhealthy that your quality of life is diminished because of your weight, weight becomes an overwhelming preoccupation in your mind. There have been movements, and you might see this. I've done some research on this, and if you'd like to do more, or if it's something you want to talk about, but there are groups that are like, well, we're just going to be obese. We're not going to worry about it. We're just going to live our lives this way. It's not that it's healthy physically, for their bodies. It is healthy, though, on the other hand, to be positive about your life and positive about who you are as a person, because it doesn't help you to be negative about yourself. It's something that is difficult because a lot of your mind, you are designed to eat to gain weight because it's a part of a survival mechanism. And I like to emphasize that because I don't think people really stop to think, how much am I in control? I'm doing what I was designed to do. So when you eat, in a sense, when you're gaining weight, you're doing something you're designed to do. It's a stress reliever to eat. So to not eat is stressful. So it's that balancing of your quality of life with what something you know is important to help you improve your quality of life. But you can't be so focused on one thing that you don't also focus on the balance or the enjoyment of being alive. I remember one of my friends said to me one day, she said, after her husband had died in a plane crash, she says, I wish he would have had that pie. But he didn't want to have the pie because he didn't want to gain any weight. Now, he wasn't a fat person. He was a pilot. He had to stay fairly fit. But it was that thought. He didn't do something that wouldn't have changed the outcome of his life as it was going to end up. And it's something to realize that no matter what we do, we may still die. And we may have no control over that day. You know, we still have to live our lives and give meaning to our lives. If it can be a soul-sucking experience to try to be so focused on one thing that you forget everything else. And I know for me personally, when I was focused on dieting, that I got to a weight and I was like, I'm okay with this weight, or I should be okay with this weight, but I wasn't okay because I knew I could lose more weight, and I knew that that could be done. And I can see myself tricking myself to eat more. Because, like I said, eating is something we do. It's something that's natural. We can't not eat and still be alive. That's the way our bodies are designed. So how can you not, so you need a life beyond the fact that you're trying to trick your biology and your environment so you won't eat more than you need. There are many, many, many ways of playing with those realities. I was talking to Laura about her tricks in terms of what kinds of foods to have easily on hand. She freezes grapes. I never thought of freezing grapes, but it's just, pop them in your mouth. They're easy if they're frozen. They don't get mushy like a strawberry does, So something you could actually put in a bag and pull out, but you probably want to keep them frozen for the most part. So those are things and that's a way of reducing stress. What can you do in terms of what you eat to reduce your stress? And it's important to realize that you have to balance that stress. There's good stress. Happiness is a kind of good stress. Exercise creates a stress to the body. It's a good stress. It's the bad stress and negative thinking. Negative thinking results in a kind of stress that's very hard to deal with and is very hard on the body. So this is one reason that a lot of psychologists and a lot of new wavers are focused on that good feeling, because good things come from feeling good about yourself. It's not that just because you feel good, good things will happen. It's that it helps those things happen. Releases stress in the body, and when you release stress, water loss can occur because it's basically a release. Everything's okay, but when you're tense and you start absorbing, you start collecting. So it's a way of flushing the system, both psychologically and physically. There are physical consequences of stress, and the types of stress will result in the body's response. Now I can see I have one viewer, but nobody's calling in. I don't know why they're not calling in. Maybe I need to get them. Or maybe they can't come in. I guess they'll tell me. Try to comment it if you can. It looks like it's going to be another one-man show again today about stress. I hope this is helpful in some way. At least it was a process for me to go through every week to do a end of obesity. Hopefully I'll get a better introduction. I had a little bit of a problem figuring out what the heck was going on with this broadcast. I was late, and I was late because I couldn't get to it. So I realized it was on another sidebar. Google really hasn't figured out this this broadcast versus hangout thing, because really I don't see the difference. The only difference for me is that I can pre-schedule an event, you know, and there's some bells and whistles that go along with that event timing. But I think there's really some unclarity in the tool here. But that's a tool issue and not about actual losing weight. Now, how am I doing? Don't ask me that question. You're not here. You have to be here to ask me that question. I don't have to answer that question until you're here to ask that question. But, you know, I think that's something else to realize. Sometimes it's stressful to do it alone. And we need to recognize that we need other people's assistance. That's where the community comes in. No matter what diet you choose. In fact, I would say I'm diet agnostic. Whatever diet is right for you, for whatever reason you choose a diet, I would actually go say, you know, go ahead and try that. And that's why I'm advocating, okay, the diet, let's not worry about what diet you have, meaning in terms of what sort of foods you eat, but let's focus on how much of those foods you eat. What helps you eat better in terms of your calorie intake and balancing out the basic nutritions that you need. Maybe a anti-wheat diet, it would be absolutely perfect for you. Try it. If it works for you, if you get benefit from it, do it. We don't need to worry so much about there's a little bit of an argument here in terms of dieting, in terms of food and the ability to feed the world. And I'm going to sort of share this with you as sort of a side note. And it can be stressful. You know, it can be stressful in anyone trying to make food choices. But that is the idea of genetically modified foods. Now, the idea of genetically modified foods is to make the yield of food higher. So, on one hand, whole foods, everybody says, well, it's good, it's, you know, what do they call it, organic food. But is organic farming more efficient than genetically engineered farming? And what are the real consequences of genetic engineering? Now, I like to think I'm agnostic about it, but I recognize that I get kind of like heated because on one hand you're talking about inefficient farming, and then on the other hand you're talking about efficient farming. I mean, I'm pro-efficient farming. Let's use the resources that we have as efficiently as possible. Why would we want to do an inefficient method of farming? So, you know, you got to be very careful. You know, in terms of the quality of food, you don't have to use it on genetically modified foods. Primarily, they focus on pesticides, and you don't have to use as many pesticides. Well, that's good for the environment, right? So, you know, it's not a simple argument. And when one person goes on one extreme to say, "Oh, it's absolutely wrong," and when another person says it's absolutely wrong, I go, "Huh? Did you even listen to the other side? Did you actually understand that there's this thing?" Now, Monsanto is probably the biggest problem in this whole discussion because what they do is they're very secretive about it. They actually tried to pass a law in California. I don't know if it did pass or didn't pass. I'm not that aware about it. But the basic idea of the law was, hey, don't ask, don't tell. You know, we don't have to tell you if it's genetically modified, which I have a problem with on one hand because I think information is good, and I think it should be something that should be generally known. But then I talked to a farmer in the UK, and he said, I don't think you can tell if it's been genetically modified. I think everything's been tainted. From everything we can tell, it's all been wiped out. All the natural crops have basically been wiped out. Now, if that's true, then everything that everyone's saying is just hocus pocus. You know, what are you talking about? But I don't know that that's true. And what are the true effects of eating genetically modified foods? We may not tell for 10 to 20 years, so there's no immediate, cost to that. So, I mean, it's a nightmare when you look at food supply in terms of what is the best way to eat, just from a whole world standard thing, and it's something that causes stress to everyone, not just people that are obese. But so my recommendation is, all these questions are good, but if you can understand, and this is, I'll also link in this, and I did in my in the comments sections about that particular wheat fearing diet, I'll call it for right now, wheat belly they call it. I did link to one author I did read, The Body Fat Solution. Now, and I think his point is really it's a physics thing. Okay, you need energy to move, to do whatever you do. There's a certain amount of energy in all the food that we eat. Those are called calories. Okay, we need the basic calories to survive, to maintain our current body mass. We need a deficit to lose, forcing our bodies to give up some of the fat to supply the energies that we need to live. Now, there's certain levels. These are where the calories, like you'll often hear like 1,000 calories being kind of the baseline that they never want to see people go below, because it's very hard to get all the nutrients you need in a day in anything under that amount. It's just really difficult. So what are you eating to stay under that? One day isn't the problem. It's a sustained period of going below that calorie count. And the point here is this: you may lose weight even though you're eating more calories than you need. Now, we have examples of that. Kids, there are people that just burn more calories than you would think they would need because of their body is running really inefficiently. So in one sense, it's efficiency that's the problem with obesity. Obese people will become very efficient at burning calories. They only burn the calories they need. They won't burn excess calories in terms of heat and stuff like that. Obese people often feel very cold because their bodies are very efficient. Now, that's not always true, but it's a good thing if the body is warm, because if it has to warm up the body, they're using calories to do that, and any excess heat to burn. But the point here, and the point that he makes in the Body Fat Solutions, he being the author of the book, is that you're not going to lose weight unless you can go under the known deficit of the calories that you need. Okay, so that's sort of like, well, I know you can't lose weight unless you go below that. And it doesn't matter what you eat, kind of. Meaning, everything's a qualifier, right? But I think it's a good practice to think in this way, because if you just think in terms, it's not what you eat, but how much you eat, at least you have an idea that you have some control by changing the portion size. This commenter is very upset about the whole thing I mentioned about McDonald's. A Iowa teacher goes on a diet at McDonald's and just eating McDonald's food, and he made a point of eating everything on the menu. And he lost weight because he was counting calories. So the only point in that is eating good is good for you, but it's not necessarily related to actually losing fat off your body. Now, if you eat better, you'll probably feel better. It's just something to be aware of. Anyways, I think that will do it for this second episode of The End of Obesity. Don't stress out. Try to find exciting, happy things to do. Remember, life continues to go on regardless of how you, where you are, what you look like to other people. You need to feel good about yourself. It doesn't matter what you look like or how much weight you actually have. It's the first thing we always need to remember is we need to feel good about ourselves for who we are as people. Okay, until next time.